it's like, okay. And this is where a lot of people, a lot of left-wing people and a lot of people who advocate for campaign finance reform, they do miss it. And they think it's as simple as, oh, AIPAC gave you this money and now you're bought and paid for by AIPAC, right? But look, there's a couple elements to this. Number one, of course they're influencing politicians. Otherwise, why would they give them the money? You know what the most incredible thing about Ron Paul was? And this speaks to his character more than anything else. He was the only congressman who the lobbyists wouldn't go visit. He was the only guy. They just stopped. Like his first couple years, they would go there and talk to him. And then they just stopped going because they just knew. Like the lobbyists knew. They were like, there's no buying this guy. They just don't even come. Like they'd come to him and they'd be like, well, we really want you to support this like subsidy or that subsidy or something like that. And Ron Paul would be like, is it in the Constitution? They'd be like, what? And like he'd be like, well, I took a pledge to uphold the Constitution, so I can't do it. And then they would just be like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like this guy actually thinks he's doing the job that he's told everybody he's doing. He was a country doctor who was just like, well, no, I'm sorry. I'm not some fucking lawyer. We're not doing this. But the idea, just on its face, that they're paying all of these people to lobby. It's not a secret. We're lobbying you to do this. You think they're just giving up their money? They're all like philanthropists or something? Like, no, obviously they're buying influence. So that's just number one. Obviously they're buying influence. But there's a much deeper, like that's the very surface of the swamp. Okay, the very surface of it is campaign contributions. Much bigger than that is like the revolving door, the opportunities that open up for you if you are a fucking John McCain. Just look at the way the media praised John McCain when he died. The opportunities that you make aside from politics, all the other stuff that comes along with that. And the other thing about it is how much they'll fucking trash you if you don't support them. So it's not just that, oh, you can get some money from AIPAC. It's the fact that look at the fucking storm of media fire that this chick is under. She just gave an apology after a New York Times piece. Like she's getting a lot of shit for this right now, okay? So it's not just that you'll get some money if you go along with that. It's also that you're going to face a lot of heat if you don't. And I think of all the shit that Ron Paul went through just for being the one principled guy in Congress. Oh, by the way, quick note, Walter Jones, another real principled congressman, passed away recently. Walter Jones, great guy. He was the guy who he was like real hardcore pro-Iraq war and then changed his mind and like was like really broken up about it. Like he used to like go and call all the like soldiers' families who had died and like apologize to them. Anyway, great guy, passed away on his birthday, I believe. Anyway, neither here nor there. So the idea that, look, to me, it's like this. There is no question that business is influencing politicians. Anybody who's denying that, I think, is just not living in reality. Like, if you think that you look at something like the weapons companies that are making billions of dollars off of all these wars that we're fighting, and then also lobby the government. Do you think they're not trying to push to continue this gravy train? I mean, how would any of these human beings exist and not be interested in that, right? This is, to me, the great the big like kind of argument between the left and the right who are honest about this issue is that like both libertarians and lefties will see this problem. And basically it's that, the shorthand way of saying it is that our politicians are bought and paid for. But the truth is that it's all this complex where people are getting rich off the state. You know what I mean? And you look at this in the banking sector, in the military industrial complex, in lots of other, even just like in the sugar industry, like I was just saying, right? That's the problem. Now, the left-wing perspective is basically that we need the state to stop working for those guys and start working for the people. That's what we need, is the state to work for the people and not for those guys. So the way to get the state over here is to I guess we could have some campaign finance rules. We could have a rule that says you can't work for these businesses. We could have a rule that says you have to give this to the people, or that you have to. The problem is that none of these rules will ever be enough. None of them. I mean, you look at Hillary Clinton as to me, the best example of this. It's like, so let's say there was a rule that said Hillary Clinton's campaign can't raise any money from corporations. You know, we'll give you taxpayer dollars. You know, you get whatever, $20 million for your campaign. You can't spend any more than that. You can't raise any money from outside groups. That's all you get. It's like, okay, so Hillary Clinton won't raise any money from anyone. But then those people will go give a contribution to the Clinton Foundation. There's like, you know, there's already rules against raising money from foreigners. So she couldn't take any money from Saudi Arabia, but they could cut $10 million over to the Clinton Foundation. That's not a problem. And then all of a sudden, Hillary Clinton's on board with the Saudi war that they want in fucking Syria or wherever. So the basic problem with that, there's a few. Number one is that if you have the Leviathan, if you have a $4 trillion superpower that moves $4 trillion a year, that controls that much power, somebody's going to get hold of this power. Fundamentally, what the leftists want is for power to not corrupt. And that's just, you're rooting against the human condition. Like, it's almost like the same way they want to eliminate the male gaze. They're like, we just want to live in a world where men don't want to fuck women. And you're like, that might not be plausible. Like, that may not be practical. I think we're probably going to have to deal with power corrupting.
You don't have to sleep with me, but don't tell me I can't stare at your titties.
I mean, right.
I mean, that's just the way it goes. Don't sleep with me all you want.
Rob is working very hard to not grope your titties. So if you think he's not going to stare at him, you're just not being realistic.
This is a compromise.
Yes, exactly.
You get to have them, and I get to stare at them.
Yeah. At least cover them things up if you don't want the fire checking them out.
Yeah.
No, but so by the very nature of it, it's like we want this tremendous power. We want a power that's so strong that they can regulate business. They can provide all these things for America. They have more power than any business has. And then that way, you know, like, they have all this power. But if you create that much power, well, power corrupts. And whether you like it or not, it's also human beings who are going to be in charge of that power. You don't have angels who are going to run the government, okay? So that, to me, is like the fundamental problem. And the other aspect of it is that all of these, the left will blame businesses for co-opting the government to screw people over, which is absolutely true. I mean, they absolutely do that. There's no doubt in my mind. I think it's just a fact. However, the tool is the government. That's really the only sustainable way to screw people over. Outside of the government, all of that interest, all of that selfishness gets channeled in productive ways.
You got to compete.
You got
to offer services and values.
Well, that's right. That's really and both of those things, right? Like, you have to compete, but the only way to really get rich in a free market is to provide people with something they want, and make sure you do a better job of it than everybody else who's offering it. And if you do that, you can get really, really rich. But, and of course, capitalism gets this, like, whatever you want to fucking call it. But the idea of, like, you know, the whole fucking Wall Street complex is all just like another government fucking Ponzi scheme. Like, the people getting rich off speculating and shit like that would be drastically lower in a free market. And of course, they'd be taking their own risk in a free market, so they could also lose a lot of money, and they wouldn't get bailed out by the government when they do. But if you, like, Steve Jobs made himself very, very rich. But it's also that he provided us something that we all wanted, that makes all of our lives more luxurious. So you can take all of those guys, not destroy an economy, and just have a free market, or you can have an all-powerful state, which is, of course, going to misallocate resources left and right, is not going to innovate the way people do when they're making voluntary choices, and it's going to be this corrupting, powerful force. Because by its very nature, they're going to have a power that none of these companies have.